Summer House Reunion. If you know, you know. And even if you don't, let me tell you, it is so karmic right now. It's so spiritually on trend for the times at hand that I felt almost summoned to just add my 2 cents in a way that I'm sure you've never experienced me do so before, especially not on this channel. But, I really just felt compelled to jump in and point out the obvious and maybe the not so obvious if you're not particularly versed in spiritual aspects, particularly of the karmic justice and retribution kind. And I was thoughtful about where to start with all of this, but I think the most pivotal point to begin is with a statement from Amanda that struck me in real time during the season. And it was when she proclaimed to be willing to die for Sierra. I would die for that girl, is what she said, to be exact. If I'm not mistaken, that was the quote. And that struck me as I was watching in real time, not because I felt so endeared by her loyalty, because I didn't feel that sense. If anything, it shocked me that someone would make such a definitive statement about someone outside of their blood, outside of their, we're not talking about childhood friends from preschool here. We're talking about someone you share a summer house with and maybe occasionally shoot the shit with when you're not taping. And of course there's the implication that they are really, really close friends. And I think for Sierra, that much really was true. But what we're seeing play out is how karmic connections can be right up under your nose, sometimes from the people that you would least expect. And for them to be uncovered, exposed, revealed sometimes in the ways that you were least prepared for, as we're seeing right now. Now, to back up a bit, as I said, her statement about I would die for her, which I believe she made to Mia at the time. I can't remember exactly. But it just seemed kind of odd, and it really, in hindsight, highlighted the twinge of obsession and maybe even a bit of possession for her as a friend that often comes with karmic connections, particularly of the friendly kind, where there is no implication of devout loyalty required, where you're just friends or you're just co-workers, or it's just more or less a casual connection that isn't supposed to be binded by blood. So for someone to make a statement like that, my antennas did go up. As one who loved Amanda and who loved the friendship more or less that the two of them had, I always felt like there was an underlining, I didn't quite go as far as to say jealous, obsession, but I felt like there was a little underlining of I really want to be her, which can veer into jealousy and envy quite quickly. And I kind of chalked it up to insecurity, because Amanda is expressively insecure. There's no secret about that. I honestly believe to some degree her clinical depression is really caping just grave insecurity and unhealed childhood wounds that she just hasn't quite addressed and really embraced or managed or released yet, whatever the case may be. But that's exactly the seed that grows contempt when you're in a connection, again, with family, friends, partner, coworker, somebody on social media that you don't even know. It grows contempt when you're not secure with self and you haven't worked out the kinks of your own character. And a lot of times it gets caped, maybe even unbeknownst to the projector, by admiration and devotion and loyalty, almost to the point again of it being a little bit weird, a little bit scary. Like, I'd die for you is a bit intense. I think we can all agree. As one who's had friendships last from preschool up until my 30s and 40s at a time, not so much anymore, for part of the reason why I'm speaking today, but it's not about me. I can attest to loving someone so deeply that they almost feel like family. And even I have never conceived of the ideal of putting my life on the line per se for a friend that I love that deeply, let alone to actually speak it out loud. So again, it starts for me reflecting back to that moment, and then the internet, is undefeated. So it has definitely done its job in pulling up all the receipts of the signs that were there all along, the ways that Amanda was trying to kind of sabotage or throw dirt on Sierra's character and her image right in front of our faces, and most times right in front of Sierra's face as well. But it was chalked up to a joke, it was chalked up to a good time. Oh, ha ha ha, that's Amanda, she's just a riot. But it's that surface that again is covering the deep seething undercurrent that ultimately can not only be dangerous again to whomever it's projected towards, but as we're witnessing in real time, it can be dangerous to the projector, him or herself. And I'm speaking of West, and I'm speaking of Amanda. West is a different case. I think nobody is surprised by his part in all this. It's disappointing, but he's not the focal point here, as the man or the woman never really is in cases like this, where it's friend and another partner. In this case, two partners, because we got Kyle and we got Wes. Is really about the dynamic, the distorted dynamic, dare I say, between Amanda and Sierra. Again, unbeknownst to Sierra, but that was probably going on and growing by the year, by the season, with Amanda all along. Not because Sierra was doing anything, because we know Sierra checked all the best friend boxes. We can agree. I'm going to take a sideline, maybe break fourth wall, as they say here, as a member of the Black Woman Coalition, the strong Black Woman Coalition. A lot of times it was kind of hard to watch Sierra kind of surrender herself to the security of the connections that were made in the house, of which many of us could observe didn't seem very sturdy, or definitely didn't seem as two-sided as they should have been. Specifically with the girls, of course, but then of course the men. And I'm not going to touch on anybody beyond West, because I don't know as much about those as I witnessed every season of Summer House. So I know what it gives for her relationship with Wes. And the first time he took her down, it was disheartening. But this season, I can say for myself, it was like, like watching through your one eye, like, no, girl, don't do it. in one vein, you wanted to be happy for her courage to be forgiving, because that's another aspect of spiritual healing and ascending and growing and evolving. I kind of hated to see her be so calloused and cold, and it seemed like a front anyway. So it was like, girl, just put the daggers down. We don't need that. But then when it turned and you saw her, lower that guard and get more comfortable, and then, oh God, start smooching and canoodling with him, it was like, no, girl, don't do it, because he didn't deserve all that. Forgiveness, yes, for her sake. To move on and be cordial, absolutely. Maybe for the house's sake and for the sake of just releasing yourself from the contempt of unforgiveness. But he definitely didn't deserve all that. And I think we all were anticipating that after, the gap of taping to when we see the reunion and see the show and all that there was going to be some fallout. But I, for one, did not expect it to come in the form of Amanda. If anything, see, I wasn't engaged in all the social media speculation. I didn't know. I made a mistake of watching a clip of Kempires about the reunion before I even watched the reunion. And as my son says, because I out loud said, "Oh my God, I shouldn't have watched that." He was like, "Mom, you never watch clips about your favorite show. They're always gonna be spoilers." And he was so right. But it prepared me mildly, because what actually fell out was not, I mean, I had to rewind multiple times, like, oh shit, oh my God. I was a messy watcher, I really was. But I also couldn't believe how things were playing out, and how Amanda was going out like this, because it's like she's sleepwalking in a sense, and that's what these these types of attachments will do to you. I really feel like there was a part of her that lost herself in the admiration of Sierra, and it fell way to the attachment of the jealousy, the envy, the insecurity, the depression obviously playing a role, but which we, if you know, you know. As a spiritualist, we know that that has a hint of spiritual attachment. That has a deeper seed and root than just not feeling good about the day or good about yourself. It's much darker than that. And so I watched the Kempire clip and I saw what was to come, but I was shocked because I had no idea this was even circulating. And then to see it play out the way that it did in the reunion, it was just like, really? This is the hill you choose to die on? So what came to mind to me, and I put this in a comment of a clip that I really enjoy, because I felt like nobody was talking about how she originally said, I would die for her, and then for it to come to all this. And what comes up for me is that she ultimately was dying to be her. And that's a key pivotal point of karmic connections, particularly of the jealousy and envy rooted kind, is that there's an experience of such inadequacy on the inside that they'll see someone or be exposed to someone that's like a mirror reflection to them of everything for them that's wrong, everything they would want to change, everything they would want to be different, and then idolizing what they see in front of them and saying, I want that, I want to be that, not even knowing the struggle that person has to go through just to maintain the Sierra of it all, as it is, to maintain that composure. A vulnerable moment was when she talked about how she got so much backlash for being played by a white man on national TV. That has a totally different layer for a black woman than it's going to have for Amanda, when it undoubtedly, I'm not projecting the worst, but it's the obvious, because there's no way that this is going to age well because of how it began. And it doesn't even seem to be coming out of a pure place for either one of them. Like I said, I don't feel like Amanda necessarily wanted to hurt Sierra to her core. I don't think she's strong enough to operate in that function. I actually think the opposite, that it was her weakness that took advantage of an opportunity to maybe have a taste of what it might be like to be idolized and attractive in the way that she, in the same way that someone she idolized was. And less, I mean, for whatever it was, whether it was fetishing or just, again, as it's being said, less being opportunistic, which is another layer of karmic connectivity. Either way, what Amanda perceived was a point of measuring up that, of course, doesn't make sense to the rational mind. You know, as Mia posed the question that everybody was thinking, like, why? What are you doing? Like, why are you doing this? It doesn't make any sense. And that's because what's going on inside of her doesn't make any sense. It's spiritual attachment, it's spiritual imbalance. And she's, of course, not the only one suffering from it. There's some bout of it going on in all of us, and certainly displayed throughout that cast in some way, shape, or form. Some a bit milder than others, some a bit more, a bit more obvious than others. But I'm choosing to speak on how it's playing out between the two of them because it's so on trend for things that are going on and being uncovered right now. Like Sierra said it best, snakes in the grass. It's happening in real time, and it's happening from people you would least expect in ways that you wouldn't even fathom. The lengths that people could go to, whether it be to actually deceive you and hurt you, or just to satisfy some void within them that you reflect back to them. So most of the times it really has much less to do with you than it actually has everything to do with someone's own insecurities or feeling of inadequacy. And West is just, whether he realizes or not, just the vessel or the vehicle for karmic retribution and for karmic balancing, because without this, Sierra could have gone on for another decade or so thinking that Amanda was just as devoted and loyal of a friend to her as she was to her. When, and that could have been harming in itself, because sometimes the spiritual aspect of all this, of harboring relationships that are not reciprocal, is that to your face it might seem like you have a two-way street and a connection that is solid, but who knows the type of energy that someone is projecting towards you spiritually, intentionally, maybe even verbally, maybe even about you. As we saw, like I said, the internet pointed out the times that it was done right in front of all of our faces. But who knows what was even happening behind closed doors, where you think you're trusting your friend with your hopes, your dreams, your sorrows, your wins, your visions, your secrets, and whole time some part of them can't help but to plot against you, to wish ill will towards you, to hope things don't work out, or to hope you don't get another win, or hope you don't make it out of this heartbreak or out of this bad situation or whatever. Who needs that energy in their lives? Nobody. But the fact of the matter is, a lot of us have or have had those energies in our lives just running rampant and we didn't even know it, because it comes in the form of it comes in such a disguise and in such a cape, um, in such a with such a veil, that again, it would be the least person that you would expect. Your mom, your sister, your brother, again, your partner, your ex, that friend way from, back in college that y'all don't even talk anymore. You don't even know they're somewhere looking at your social media, hoping that, you post hoping that the next post you make is something bad, or they're, hoping that they can catch some flaw in you to celebrate, or hear about some destruction or dissatisfaction in your life that they can somehow transmute into force fuel for themselves. It gets that deep. And I feel like Sierra, being the light that I've always seen that she is, I feel like she does a lot of projecting to others, like how much of a light they are, as she did with Amanda, building her up all the time. But I don't really see, as Mia even pointed out, that she allows herself to shine in the ways that are authentic and organic. Not just when she gets mad, and not just when she, it's like, tell them Sierra, but really just allowing herself to shine in the way that is unapologetic, where she doesn't dim, she doesn't diffuse and pull back so that someone else can take the forefront. That's a bad bitch right there. For all intents and purposes, educated, smart, kind, good intentioned, high moral and ethical standards, ambitious. Her taste in men is questionable, but usually, particularly empaths, have that challenge on their way to evolving into their best self. So hopefully this is a pivotal moment for her to transmute and elevate from, and not to backtrack and regress. I'm praying that for her for sure. But the point of the matter is what I'm getting to is just how close opposition can lurk and linger before you even realize the damage that has been caused or the damage that is yet to be caused. I feel like for Sierra, regardless of, she's in a good place in her career and socially right now where I don't think it matters too much what damage has been done, that she can ultimately transmute and release and accept the parts that she needs to for how she made agreement with how things have played out. Because like I said, we all were hoping that she wouldn't trust Wes again. But the thing is, like, you'll never know until you know. But there usually are signs, that point in that direction, or give you breadcrumbs to whether or not someone is really in your corner and really happy for you, or even capable of being like a positive force in your life. I feel like a telltale sign was the fact that Amanda wasn't good for Amanda. She has so many things that she was working through and struggling through that it's virtually impossible for someone that's not a good friend to themselves to be a good friend to anyone else. Which is partly why we can all agree that the her and Wes thing is probably not going to age well. Number one, Wes opportunistically took a moment and made it a mountain, and he's sitting upon that mountain right now because it's trending, it's the talk of the town. It's like all publicity is good publicity, so we think. And I do think there's a side of Wes, like Amanda, that is so deeply insecure that it can be problematic, maybe even a bit threatening. I don't necessarily think that he is diabolical, in the way that he's kind of being painted now. But again, it's that insecurity that you can see in just his persona, like how he presents himself. He's like from a ranch in, like, what, Minnesota or somewhere Midwest, I don't know. But how he presents is the very opposite of what you expect. And I can't say that you can't be inspired by other expressions of style, but it's something to be said about putting on something that is completely different from your natural come from. There's just something about it there that's just screams, I want to be someone else. I want to, he's a chameleon of sorts, where he tries on different personas and different guises, and he actually found one that kind of works for him, because it is attractive and it is fascinating to a degree, like how this Midwest boy somehow looks like he's from, Brooklyn, New York, or Queens or some shit, you know what I mean? But there's an implication there as to someone that is not secure. And of course we see how he does women, and he's young. All of that going on to say that it doesn't make any sense other than there to be some type of spiritual, maybe mental or chemical imbalance going on with Amanda, that she would stake her entire career, her social status, her marriage, her best friendship, her character, her reputation, everything, just blow it all up just for what's ultimately going to amount to, a good time when it's all said and done. And just barely, because the good time that they may have been having before all of this blew up is going to pale in comparison to the backlash. And here's the thing, when it comes to like destiny swapping, or people wanting to kind of absorb, like clone your character and take it on as their own, or kind of take on different aspects of you, or find their ways into different things that make them feel more like you, the object of their idolization. you usually can't carry that weight, certainly not as well as the person who it comes natural to, but definitely not eternally. So it's only a matter of time before this romance fizzles out because it's built on nothing. And not only that, when you consider how people want to take on other people's persona and destiny and life and like just deflect their an idolized light onto themselves to kind of absorb that. Like I feel like some part of her was a little bit jealous of Sierra just always being the hottest woman in the room socially, and um, by observance standards. Everybody wanted to date Sierra, kiss Sierra, make out with Sierra, be in Sierra's presence. It really it's not so much her aesthetic, it's really the light that's within her, in which most of the guys and girls realize there's no point of comparison. And in the case of West, that you can't hide in a light such as that because it's too exposing. It's like the sun. So you can't be um, deceptive and playing roles and keeping an act going when you're in the presence of pure light. It's just that there's only but so long that you can survive in that space before you are compelled, literally, to transform or to just show yourself. And so I kind of want to wrap up here because this was the most pivotal thing. The way that we saw Sierra go through the turmoil of the breakup with Wes, although it was hard to watch and it was sad at times, for the most part, she kept her grace. She kept her composure, even a little bit too composed at times when you knew she was hurting and she was trying to stay stone, to protect herself. But she kept her composure because she's built for the trials and tribulations that are assigned to her life. That was for her to go through. I really truly believe, as I said, for her to transmute and evolve from, to finally find her healthy boundary with her healthy balance with boundaries in a way that you don't shut the good people out, but you also don't let the vampires and the vampires at the worst, the opportunists at the very least, get more than what they are worthy of taking, or have more than what they're worthy of taking. Friends, family, all of that. Um, but like I said, it was graceful. Now you watch and you mark my words. The retribution, here is how karmic justice is served on a silver platter, is the fallout that's going to come when things ultimately fall apart. First of all, the fact that it's probably excruciating to hold it together even now for the face of the relationship. The fun has probably already fizzled out, or the scandal has overshadowed the fun at this point. And then when nobody cares, it really will seem worthless. But the fallout that is going to come on account of Amanda trying to step into Sierra's shoes just to try it out is going to be catastrophic, because Amanda is not mentally, emotionally, psychologically, and probably not even spiritually equipped to manage the same level of heartbreak that Sierra encountered and incurred. She's not built for it. And that's going to be the karmic justice. That's going to flip-flop everything on its head, unfortunately. Because generally speaking, when you lust after someone's legacy, their life, their character, their looks, their light, their opportunities, their favor, their fortune, whatever it is that you see of someone else and you crave it so much for yourself that you're willing to overthrow your own integrity, you're going to get what you ask for. you're going to be able to walk a mile in that person's shoes, or to try on whatever aspect of their aura that seemed appealing to you. But you better be damn sure straight knowing that it's not going to look the same, it's not going to feel the same, and it's not going to end the same with you, because it wasn't meant for you. So not only is she most likely going to buckle under the pressure of all of this backlash, when the dust settles and nobody cares anymore, which these days happens much sooner than later, could it be that she actually branded herself in such a unsavory way, that she won't have the man or a man at all? She might not have a job. She certainly won't have the favor of the audience that had grown to love her just for the quirky, funny Amanda that she was, not needing to be the hottest girl in the room. But still having her own thing too, not to take anything away from her aesthetic, but no comparison, really and truly, as there shouldn't be, because that led to the competition that ultimately led to the conflict that we're watching now. But there may not be a place or space for her, whether or not there actually is, and network will milk it for what it's worth until it doesn't matter anymore, or just as someone who's already psychologically a bit fragile, she might find that she won't even have any comfort in those spaces anymore. Like, how's she gonna go back to a summer house and deal with what she dealt on that reunion stage for a whole season? I don't think she's built for that. I don't think there's enough money in the world to endure that and know that you deserve it, know that it's at least justified, I'll say. And then you blew up your marriage. God forbid if Kyle get back up on top, which when you're dealing with a partner, I can't even get into that aspect of it as much as I want to. But when you're dealing with a partner who's got all of that going on, look how it affected his business. You would never know the correlation between those two. Somebody that's depressed, can't get up, lazy, apathetic, doesn't want to do anything. Whatever happened to her swimwear line? Like, all of that shit that she had going on, he inherited once they joined as husband and wife. That binding made it so that he shared her attachments. And so a lot of the fallout that we were seeing against him was him probably trying to keep his head above water. Now, don't get me wrong, he got his own shit too, and we know that. But Kyle came from, what seemed to be a really tight-knit family, a loving family that supported each other, and he seemed to come from a different stock than Amanda to me. Something seemed a bit more cold and callous the few times that you saw her family. And we know that those insecurities got to come from somewhere. They don't just magically appear. It's much more deep rooted when it evolves to this point. So there's that side note, that the divorce might be the best thing to happen for Kyle, so he can truly operate in his element, as F-boy as it may be at times. We might see Loverboy skyrocket and go up, or his whole livelihood take an upturn, because he cut that dead weight out. Sad to say. So it's back to my point as to how you never know how the connections that you forge, whether they're casual, whether they're commercial or for TV, whether they are professional, creative, familial, romantic, like every sense of the word that you can think of. You gotta be careful who you align your energy with, because it can absolutely be effective and infective in the most unsavory ways that you could imagine. Now, like I said, Sierra is strong. I believe she will bounce back, even if she stumbles a little bit till she gets there. Kyle is a force. I think we'll see him back on next season undoubtedly. But Amanda, between now and the next taping, I would be surprised if she if she does return to the next season, and if she does, or if Sierra does, one of the two, and if she does, that will probably be the extension of the retribution being paid to actually watch her deterioration, or to be confirmed of this whole situation's deterioration, right in, playing out in front of our eyes in a way that you can't miss. Because right now they can hide between posts that they want the public to see, and when they want to be spotted, and again riding this wave of controversy. But best believe the thrill is gone. The thrill don't last too long when it's not authentic to you. And most of these karmics, as we call them in the spiritual community, whether they be self indicted, or initiated, or whatever the case may be, or circumstantial, you get thrust into a karmic situation and then it becomes yours. Most of them will come to the realization that none of it was worth it before it's all said and done. And they may not be too quick to let it be known publicly, but one thing's for sure, it cannot be helped but to be exposed in some way, shape, and form, because it's just the karmic justice and the balance of the universe. Keep your hands to yourself. Keep your energy to yourself. Keep your grubby paws off of other people's lives and lights. Because it's never going to work out in the way what you're seeing projecting off of someone else is never going to just be able to be taken off and transported onto you. Certainly not in the same way, and certainly not better, as some are delusional to think that they can do you better than you can. Right now, like I said, it's on trend. It's happening in real time, and I feel guided to speak to it because it's on brand for what I do in my readings and the messages that come up. I try to veer away from the negative stuff, but it pops up. It is what it is. And I speak to it as I feel guided too. As a matter of fact, I'm about to pull some cards in a second. Won't be surprised if it'll come up in that message as well, or some aspect of it. Not that I'm hoping for it, because like I said, I try to keep my eyes focused on the most positive, but I feel accountable and responsible to channel whatever comes through. And so this felt like an unusual but an open door nonetheless for me to talk about something that is quite on brand for what we are witnessing and maybe even experiencing firsthand, of the spiritual nature, whether you realize that or acknowledge that or not. It is quite spiritual. What you're seeing is really not that foreign. It's not that unusual. It might be happening to you in a way, or has happened to you in a way that you didn't even realize. And if you're lucky, particularly blessed, you would hope for that exposure to come sooner or later, so that not only do you know exactly what you're dealing with, or who's dealing with you, dare I say, but that you can make the necessary adjustments to release, forgive, and move forward, transmute and evolve on account of any disenfranchisement, not to harbor it and let it weigh you down, but for the things that are exposed that are completely unsavory, allow it to be a force fuel for you, not only to stay enlightened about the possibilities of infractions such as that, but to erect healthy boundaries, not necessarily stringent, or at least not eternally so, but healthy boundaries in ways that can protect your peace, to the fullest extent. And I'll tell you that sometimes the hardest part is maintaining boundaries against folks, or between folks that you feel are the closest to you. It's the hardest part, because something within you doesn't really want to maintain that distance. Sometimes you don't even understand it, but that's a whole nother story for another day. But follow that inkling when it's urging you to protect yourself or stand back or release, detach, separate, move on, leave that job, break up with that partner, stop accepting somebody's call, stop sleeping with somebody, stop telling somebody all your business. Don't trust everybody just because there's family or blood attached. Everybody ain't kin. It just is what it is. And anything else that pops up that feels strange but uncomfortable, at least pray in um, the understanding and enlightenment to support that feeling if you don't feel compelled to act first and research and discover later, as I can attest to, because sometimes that is your only saving grace when you follow that inkling, that nudge, that intuition, and you don't really even know why, but later it's revealed to you exactly why, and that you were completely justified to do so, and it might actually have been the thing to save your sanity or maybe even save your life in some extreme cases. So I speak from experience, fortunately and unfortunately, on that side, on the side of the coin of being projected upon, sometimes having been betrayed right under my nose, misled to think that someone meant well for me when they really didn't all along, or they grew to have a disdain for me that had nothing to do with me. So I can speak from experience on the measures that get to be taken to make sure that you're okay, first and foremost, because you don't owe your energy to anyone that is not in a position to take care of it or to at least appreciate the exchange, you know? So, yeah, there's that. I think all at the end of the day, the most important offering here is to just allow your intuition to speak. And when things are revealed in a very actual and practical way, don't delude yourself to think that you must be misguided or you must be mistaken, and don't let others misguide you in that way, where your head and your heart are in sync with what you're experiencing. Don't let someone project onto you that somehow you got the problem. Even if you have to pull back a second for all to be revealed, you don't owe anyone the luxury of your time and your what's the right word, accessibility while things get sorted out. It'll all come out in the wash exactly as it needs to, but don't allow yourself to get washed up on shore in the process. All right, so I guess I'm gonna leave it there. Yeah, like I said, I'll probably pull some cards today, even though this went a bit longer, because I didn't want to write notes or anything. I just wanted to channel freely. And I'm sure there are going to be some things that I wish I had said, but who knows? Maybe this will become a reoccurring event on this channel. We shall see. But in the meantime, I thank you for listening and watching. Check out some other videos or check me out on the one I may post today, most likely. But nonetheless, I wish you all nothing but the utmost peace.